Isn't it funny how the name Oprah has become synonymous with empowerment and influence, yet its origin traces back to a lesser-known biblical figure, Orpah, from the Book of Ruth. Orpah, whose name means back of the neck in Hebrew, is noted for turning away from her mother-in-law Naomi to return to her people, a decision interpreted as a lack of loyalty compared to Ruth's steadfastness. In rabbinic literature, Orpah is further depicted as the mother of 4 Philistine giants, including Goliath, who David would later slay. According to the Babylonian Talmud, Orpah met a grim fate at the hands of Abishai, David's general, who killed her with her own spindle. Like a vampire and a stake through the heart, except this went straight through her head. Delving into biblical Orpah's lineage, her father, King Eglon of Moab, is said to be the son of Balak. The Zohar, a foundational Kabbalistic text, describes Balak as a master sorcerer who utilized a magical metal bird to gain prophetic insights. This bird, crafted with precious metals, would speak truths and warnings, advising Balak against opposing Israel, a warning he ultimately ignored. Despite these warnings, Balak's choices led to his downfall, illustrating the peril of neglecting divine counsel. Or maybe the scholars had another reason for naming her after Orpah, outside of her leaving to return home after her husband, father-in-law, and brother-in-law's death. Custom called for her to marry the next unwedded brother, but there was none. So according to tradition, where her mother-in-law, Naomi, told her to return home, and she listened, she was not in the wrong. She was following custom. So why name her cruelly and say her name is as such because she turned her back on her mother-in-law? Maybe Orpah was something more sinister, a vampire in the Bible? Who knows, but Oprah Winfrey, born Orpah Gale Winfrey, was named after this biblical figure. Due to frequent mispronunciations, the name evolved into Oprah, which she embraced. It's intriguing to consider how a name associated with a controversial biblical figure was given to her by her parents, out of all the names to choose from. Why? Even more ironic is that the word vampire has a complex etymology rooted in Slavic languages and folklore. The earliest recorded use of a similar term dates back to the early 18th century, appearing in various forms such as vampire in Serbian and upire in Old Russian and Ukrainian. These terms were used to describe reanimated corpses or evil spirits that fed on the blood or life force of the living. The word likely entered Western Europe through Austrian and German reports of Eastern European vampire folklore, particularly during a vampire panic wave in the 1720s. From vampire, Serbian, it was adopted into German as vampire, then into French as vampire, and eventually into English as vampire, around 1732. Linguistically, the Slavic root pi, to drink, is often linked to the word's development, reinforcing the vampire's association with drinking blood. Some scholars also suggest possible connections to the Turkish word uber, witch, or the Greek nosophoros, plague bringer, though these are more speculative. Uber, upir, orpa, opera, In the Testament of Solomon, a demon named Ornias is described as tormenting a young boy by sucking his thumb and draining his vitality. Ornias, over time, could have developed into the Cabal Onassis bloodline. Who knows? But we do know that Ornias reveals himself as a being from the Aquarius constellation and a descendant of the archangel Uriel. Solomon subdues him using a magical ring, compelling him to assist in constructing the temple. Interestingly enough, Oprah Winfrey was born under the Aquarius sign, as was Aristotle Onassis, patriarch of the Cabal Onassis bloodline. While it's speculative, one could draw parallels between her charismatic influence and the concept of an energy vampire, captivating audiences and commanding attention. Her media presence has been so profound that it has sometimes taken on a near-religious fervor among her followers. The intertwining of these narratives, from Orpah's controversial legacy and mystical lineage to Oprah's rise as a cultural icon. Maybe Aquarians in general are just draining. Jokes aside, let's talk about vampires.
Onias is a vampire spoken on in the extra-canonical text, the Testament of Solomon, which in a nutshell talks about how Solomon was given a ring by the archangel Michael that gave him dominance over demons. These demons would go on to be subjected by Solomon and used to build the Temple of Jerusalem, as well as serving for menial tasks. For example, when the Queen of Sheba visited, Solomon used a demon to rearrange the place around so that she could be more at rest. But there was also demons collecting materials, building, and laying bricks for the temple. Onias is the first demon we encounter in this text. He is a vampiric demon who appears at sunset and drains his victims' resources, specifically their pay, food, and life force. He drains the life force of the young by sucking on their thumb. After several nights of these attacks, the victim, a young boy, under the supervision of Solomon, becomes frail and weak. This demon is also a protective spirit, however, with the primary task of roaming the earth to find and strangle people who are consumed with desire for young virgins. He prefers to strangle these men while they are asleep, but when they do not fall asleep in time, Onias will transform himself into a beautiful woman and seduce them. As a low-ranking demon, he also obeys the commands of all other demons and is extremely afraid of iron, as most entities are. He is introduced as such in the text.
Testament of Solomon, son of David, who was king in Jerusalem, and mastered and controlled all spirits of the air, on the earth and under the earth. By means of them also he wrought all the transcendent works of the temple, telling also of the authorities they wield against men, and by what angels these demons are brought to naught, of the sage Solomon. Blessed art thou, O Lord God, who didst give Solomon such authority. Glory to thee and might unto the ages. Amen. And behold, when the temple of the city of Jerusalem was being builded, and the artificers were working thereat, Onias the demon came among them toward sunset, and he took away half of the pay of the chief deviser's little boy, as well as half his food. He also continued to suck the thumb of his right hand every day, and the child grew thin, although he was very much loved by the king. So King Solomon called the boy one day, and questioned him, saying, Do I not love thee more than all the artisans who are working in the temple of God? Do I not give thee double wages and a double supply of food? How is it that day by day and hour by hour thou growest thinner? But the child said to the king, I pray thee, O king, listen to what has befallen all that thy child hath. After we are all released from our work on the temple of God, after sunset, when I lie down to rest, one of the evil demons comes and takes away from me one half of my pay and one half of my food. Then he also takes hold of my right hand and sucks my thumb, and lo, my soul is oppressed, and so my body waxes thinner every day. Now when Solomon heard this, I entered the temple of God, and prayed with all my soul night and day that the demon might be delivered into my hands, and that I might gain authority over him. And it came about through my prayer that grace was given to me from the Lord Sabaoth by Michael, his archangel. He brought me a little ring, having a seal consisting of an engraved stone, and said to me, Take, O Solomon, King, son of David, the gift which the Lord God has sent thee, the highest Sabaoth. With it thou shalt lock up all demons of the earth, male and female, and with their help thou shalt build up Jerusalem. But thou must wear this seal of God, and this engraving of the seal of the ring sent thee is a pentalpha. And I, Solomon, was overjoyed, and praised and glorified the God of heaven and earth. And on the morrow I called the boy, and gave him the ring, and said to him, Take this, and at the hour in which the demon shall come unto thee, throw this ring at the chest of the demon, and say to him, In the name of God, King Solomon calls thee hither. And then do thou come running to me, without having any misgivings or fear in respect of aught thou mayest hear on the part of the demon. So the child took the ring, and went off. And behold, at the customary hour, Onias, the fierce demon, came like a burning fire to take the pay from the child. But the child, according to the instructions received from the king, threw the ring at the chest of the demon, and said, King Solomon calls thee hither. And then he went off at a run to the king. But the demon cried out aloud, saying, Child, why hast thou done this to me? Take the ring off me, and I will render to thee the gold of the earth. Only take this off me, and forbear to lead me away to Solomon. But the child said to the demon, As the Lord God of Israel liveth, I will not break thee, so come hither. And the child came at a run, rejoicing, to the king, and said, I have brought the demon, O king, as thou didst command me, O my master. And behold, he stands before the gates of the court of thy palace, crying out and supplicating with a loud voice, offering me the silver and gold of the earth, if I will only bring him unto thee. And when Solomon heard this, he rose up from his throne, and went outside into the vestibule of the court of his palace. And there he saw the demon shuddering and trembling, and he said to him, Who art thou? And the demon answered, I am called Orneus. And Solomon said to him, Tell me, O demon, to what zodiac sign thou art subject. And he answered, To the water pourer. And those who are consumed with desire for the noble virgins upon earth, these I strangle. But in case there is no disposition to sleep, I am changed into 3 forms. Whenever men come to be enamored of women, I metamorphose myself into a comely female, and I take hold of the men in their sleep, and play with them. And after a while I again take to my wings and hide me to the heavenly regions. I also appear as a lion, and I am commanded by all the demons. I am offspring of the archangel Uriel, the power of God. I, Solomon, having heard the name of the archangel, prayed and glorified God, the Lord of heaven and earth. And I sealed the demon and set him to work at stone cutting, so that he might cut the stones in the temple, which, lying along the shore, had been brought by the Sea of Arabia. But he, fearful of the iron, continued and said to me, I pray thee, King Solomon, let me go free, and I will bring you all the demons. And as he was not willing to be subject to me, I prayed the archangel Uriel to come and succor me. And I forthwith beheld the archangel Uriel coming down to me from the heavens. And the angel bade the whales of the sea come out of the abyss. And he cast his destiny upon the ground, and that destiny made subject to him the great demon. And he commanded the great demon and bold Orneus to cut stones at the temple. And accordingly I, Solomon, glorified the God of heaven and maker of the earth. And he bade Orneus come with his destiny, and gave him the seal, saying, Away with thee, and bring me hither the prince of all the demons. This excerpt derives from the Testament of Solomon, verses 1 to 12.
In summary, King Solomon, while building the temple in Jerusalem, learns that a demon named Orneus is tormenting a young boy by stealing half his wages and food and draining his life by sucking his thumb. This life draining causes the boy to grow thinner, which confuses Solomon because he's been looking after the boy well. So he asks the boy, what is causing such thinness? And the boy tells him about Orneus. In response, Solomon prays to God to be able to have authority over such a demon. God sends the archangel Michael with a ring engraved with the 6-pointed star that stands as the Star of David today. But in occult terms, it is the combination of Enki's upright triangle and Ki's downward pointed triangle, together representing the divine masculine and feminine respectively, since they were the genetic architects of mankind as we are today, the father and the mother of earth, with Ki being the mother of the Anunnaki as well, and Enki being the ruler of the underworld, which was not innately evil initially until agendas and religion came into play. So Enki essentially rules over what we today consider evil spirits and demons, because 1, demons were cursed into existence as the dead spirits that were not allowed into heaven because they in their living life were the offspring of humans and the fallen angels. And 2, Enki created humanity and led the fallen angels. So the seal to demons is like that of an envelope with orders in it sealed by a king. It is the ultimate authority, just like Enki's name is to these same type of spirits in every religion under every name. If you are one that has been haunted or is being haunted by hags or shadow people or any demons, you have to simply find Enki's name in your belief system and find a way to say it while being attacked by a hag or plagued by shadow people or during sleep paralysis. It hasn't failed me yet, and others who has tried this that I've recommended this to, it hasn't failed them either. For example, if you're a Christian, Enki's name in your belief system is Jesus. You just can't simply say God because God is so broad of a term. You have to specifically call on his name. They are subjected to Enki for the reasons named previously. Anyways, this ring gives Solomon power to control demons, and it was given to him by the archangel Michael, who is not a fallen angel. But in the original story of the Bible, which is found in the Mesopotamian epics, the angels are not divided into fallen and still righteous. There is a compromise after Noah's flood, and they all go to maintain their given roles and domains using their born abilities, whether they reside in the heavens, the skies, the sands, the earth, or the abyss. None of these domains are innately good or bad, just simply places. However, religion and agenda changes this over time. Just like in the non-canonical text of Jubilees, God instructs Blasphema, who is also known as Biblical Satan, to give Noah the book of all cures for any ailments that could be inflicted on humanity. This is Enlil instructing Enki to give all the cures of humanity to humans because Enki created us, and he's a genetic scientist and architect. So of course he knows this information well, and does as his brother Enlil instructs. I talk more about this in depth in previous episodes. I actually have several deep dives. So continuing, Solomon gives the ring to the boy, who uses it to bind Ornias by following Solomon's instructions to throw the ring at the demon's chest to subdue him, and upon doing so to run directly to Solomon. The boy did as instructed, and the demon begs for release, offering gold and silver, but the boy brings him before the king regardless. Solomon then questions Ornias, who admits to seducing men in dreams, strangling those full of lust and those who go after virgins, and tells of how he can shapeshift into a woman, a lion, and a winged creature to fly to the heavens. He also states that he is the offspring of the archangel Uriel. Solomon praises God, then forces Ornias to cut stones for the temple. When Ornias resists, because like most entities, iron is a repellent, and cutting stone would involve using or touching iron. Ornias was afraid, so of course he was adamant about being disobedient to Solomon. Solomon prays to Uriel, who Ornias is the offspring of and subordinate to, according to his own words. Uriel, who commands sea creatures, creatures of the abyss, which latter becomes known as the underworld, otherworld, and netherworld, helps Solomon subjugate Ornias. Solomon then sends Ornias to fetch the prince of all demons, Beelzebub. He's one of the prince of all demons, and using the power of the ring and God's authority, instructs him to throw the ring at Beelzebub's chest in the same manner that the boy threw the ring at Ornias' chest to subjugate him. I do find it interesting that Ornias' name over time could have become Onassis, the Kabbalistic bloodline. I'm serious, y'all. But whatever the case may be, Ornias is a vampire of the energy and blood-sucking kind. Now, when I think of vampires, I think of more than just beings that garner energy from simply being blood suckers, but also life and energy suckers who can simply drain life from being in proximity without sucking blood or biting. But there are also those who do garner energy and life force from sucking blood as well. It's not mutually exclusive. However, here we have an actual blood sucker and energy sucker mentioned in the Testament of Solomon when we speak of Ornias. There are many interesting parts to the story that can be easily overlooked, so allow me to break it down. Ornias is the type of vampire that occurs in popular culture. While he is an energy sucker, he is a blood-sucking demon, a vampire. But he is also the type that appears as what we call in the Galagichi culture, hags. Others may call them jinn or sleep paralysis. It is the instance where you wake up and you cannot move and may or may not see something on top of you that is darker than the night. Humanoid, but not human at all. You cannot move, you cannot speak, you are stuck. You are being ridden, you are being held down. And this is what Ornias describes that he does to men. He is also a shapeshifter who can be a woman and drain from men through making them lust, which also ties into riding men in the form of a hag, and his other form is a lion, and then he has a winged form. Ornias is from the constellation of Aquarius. When people say zodiacs do not matter, this is why they get an eye roll. And it's not simply because they may only pay attention to sun signs and not natal charts. It's because of the many texts, the older you go back, they become more prevalent, that I've read where star systems play an integral role in the type of angels, demons, aliens, or Anunnaki being reckoned with. Whatever you prefer to call these entities, there's usually a constellation associated with them and being mentioned. In my opinion, it's like being born into a magical house or class of people depending on how your natal chart is fixed, but humanity has lost its way and how to wield its power by large. Ornias also mentioned that he is from the constellation of Aquarius and that he is an offspring of the archangel Uriel. To break down the significance of what Ornias tells Solomon about himself, where he's from and who rules over him and from whom he is an offspring of, let's start with Uriel. Uriel was originally an archangel until Pope Zachary deemed mainly Michael, Gabriel, and Raphael to be archangels in efforts to stop the veneration of angels in the Catholic Church. However, man has no business deciding who is and who is not an archangel. Uriel is known as the angel that presides over hell and holds its keys, while also being the same angel that stands at the gate of Eden with a fiery sword. God is my light, or flame of God. Now, this goes back to a prior episode when we discussed Enoch in more depth and how he went to this beautiful land, sacred and mystical, believed to either be the Garden of Eden or the land of the gods, heaven, Axis Mundi. Mount Meru, it has many names and different belief systems. It's a place in the north, however, even in Enoch. Now, amongst all this beauty, these gems, these wonders, in this northern place that Enoch is in, he is taken to a place that's in the center of this place. Now, when you think about Mount Meru and how the maps used to show 4 islands and a black rock in the middle, which which we call Black Mountain, this is what comes to mind here for me. Mind you, as I've shown you before in previous episodes, especially video podcasts, these maps displaying these 4 mountains that is talked about all throughout ancient lore, no matter where people were at around the earth, even when they weren't in northern territories. These maps stopped being produced in the 1700s. So Enoch is taken to a place in the center of this mystical land in the north that had a hole. When he went into this hole, it was where angels were bonded and being tortured. It's what we in modern day would call hell or hollow earth. Well, at least a section within hollow earth, because these same texts describe the hollows as being layered, and all parts are not places of horror. The ancient Greeks called this place Tartarus, and the further you go back in their mythos, you find that Tartarus was originally used to confine dangers to the gods of Olympus. Later, Tartarus began to be known as a space to imprison and torment mortals who sinned against gods. The fact that Uriel stands at the gates to Eden and also holds the key and rules over hell reminds me of near-death experiences, or NDEs, when people tell of being able to see heaven and thinking they're about to have a place there, and then suddenly being thrusted into a fiery space of gore and monsters and unseemly sights. Pure hell. It would make sense, as the one who stands at the gate into heaven in this sense is also the one who presides over hell. But it's funny that he holds the keys to the gates of hell. But I'll circumvent back to that later and shortly. Uriel, alongside Michael and Gabriel, are also the ones who buried Adam and his son Abel in the 38th chapter of the Apocalypse of Moses. He is the angel who guides Enoch through heaven and hell and warns Noah about the impending flood, and who in the Hermetic Kabbalah is the angel that presides over the elements of earth and the archangel of the north. Rightly so, as the entrance to Eden and the entrance to hell within it occur in the book of Enoch when he is taken to the north. He is the same angel who checked the doors of Egypt for lamb's blood during the plague, and is believed to either be a cherub or seraph angel, and is regarded as the patron angel of arts and scientists, and often depicted carrying a book or a papyrus scroll. The irony in this is that the religious narrative says these entities that transgressed against Enlil and followed Enki are Satan and the fallen angels, and that they were imprisoned, yet God released Satan during the time of Moses and a tenth of the demons because God wanted Satan's help to pit Pharaoh against Moses. This story is told of in the book of Jubilees, where Satan is called Nestema. The Kemetic entity Thoth, also known as the scribe and depicted with a scroll, is also often linked to being Enki himself or the son of Enki. Remember that as well. In Zoroastrianism, Uriel is the one who brings light and fire through spiritual enlightenment through knowledge, as he is also known as the angel of hidden knowledge, alchemy, and transmutation. He is the angel of the apocalypse, prophecy, and illumination. We see this in 2nd Esdras when God sends Uriel to answer the prophet Ezra's questions about divine justice and end time. Now, during the crucifixion of Jesus, Uriel is the angel that dipped his wing in the blood and water flowing from Jesus's flank and filled a cup with it, and carrying this cup, he and the archangel Michael rushed into the world and was said by legend to have sprinkled it all over Ethiopia, and every place that the drop of this blood fell, a church was built. Uriel is also often depicted carrying a chalice or cup of Christ's blood in Ethiopian iconography for these reasons. I know you're wondering what this has to do with vampirism, but trust me, it comes full circle. So in the book of Enoch, Uriel stands as one of the 4 principal archangels alongside Michael, Raphael, and Gabriel. Among them, Uriel plays the role of the illuminator, the one who reveals hidden things, interprets divine mysteries, and announces divine judgment. His name, meaning light of God, fits his assignment perfectly, as he brings clarity and illumination to Enoch regarding the events that led to the corruption of mankind and the impending consequence that is the world flood. When the Watchers, a group of 200 angels, descend upon Mount Hermon and take human wives, they teach forbidden knowledge to humankind and beget hybrid children. Unanimously, sometimes they are called the Nephilim. However, they vary. Some of them were the hybrid offspring between angels and animals. It wasn't just angels and humans, and all of the angels were not men. And as generations continued, the different hybrids also mixed with one another, creating all types of cryptics. This act of heavenly rebellion disrupts the natural order in the book. The Nephilim and Enoch are said to devour everything on earth and then turn to drinking blood and consuming flesh, bringing widespread chaos and corruption. Uriel's first major role is to reveal the judgment against the Watchers and their offspring. In 1 Enoch chapter 9 verses 1 to 3, when the cries of mankind ascend to the heavens due to the violence and sin unleashed by the fallen, Uriel is one of the angels who brings these cries before the Most High. In response, God sends Uriel to intervene directly. In 1 Enoch chapter 10 verses 1 through 4, God commands Uriel to go to Noah and warn him of the coming flood, a judgment against the corrupted earth. Uriel is told to declare to Noah in God's name what is about to happen and to instruct him on how to preserve himself and his family. In this, Uriel acts as a messenger of divine preservation as well as judgment. Uriel is then commanded to stand over the destruction of the earth and watch as the punishment is enacted upon the Nephilim and their angelic fathers. He becomes one of the key agents overseeing the consequences of divine justice. In 1 Enoch chapter 19 verse 1, Uriel Uriel shows Enoch the place where the fallen angels are bound, he describes to Enoch how the spirits of the Nephilim are now disembodied and remain on earth as unclean spirits, as demons, unable to ascend to heaven nor to return to the underworld. These cursed beings would afflict, oppress, destroy, attack, do battle, and work destruction on the earth until the day of judgment. This directly links Uriel to demonology and the policing of forbidden spiritual offspring. Later, in 1 Enoch chapter 20 verse 2, Uriel is listed as the holy angel who is over the world and over Tartarus, the prison of the fallen angels. Tartarus in this context is not simply hell, but a specific containment place for these rebellious divine beings. Uriel therefore is more than a messenger. He is a warden and divine overseer of imprisoned spirits, including the watchers themselves. Uriel's role is unique because while Michael and Raphael deal directly with battle and healing, Uriel deals with cosmic justice and divine light. He does not wield a sword like Michael, but reveals hidden truths, warns the righteous like Noah, and enforces spiritual boundaries between heaven, earth, and the underworld. He also teaches Enoch the movements of the heavenly bodies, linking him to astrology and the divine clockwork, another tool of divine order. In short, Uriel in the book of Enoch is the revealer of judgment against the watchers, the announcer of the flood to Noah, the overseer of Tartarus where the fallen angels are imprisoned, the guardian of cosmic law and heavenly knowledge, the one who interprets mysteries and brings hidden truths into the light. Through all this, Uriel becomes a symbol of divine justice and cosmic balance, especially in times when divine law is breached through unnatural unions or spiritual rebellion. And his light exposes corruption, and his command binds those who transgress the order of creation. As much as I love the book of Enoch with all my dear, dear heart, the book of Enoch is still told from the lenses of an Abrahamic religion. So let's look at the same verses, but from the perspective of the Mesopotamian entity Enki as Uriel. Why? Because from a Mesopotamian perspective, the archangel Uriel, known in the book of Enoch as the revealer of hidden truths and the messenger who warns Noah of the coming flood, closely mirrors the ancient deity Enki, also known as Ea. In Sumerian and Akkadian mythology, Enki is the god of wisdom, fresh water, magic, and divine secrets. When the gods decide to destroy humanity with a great flood, it is Enki who defies the divine council of gods by warning Ziusudra, also known as Utnapishtim, also known as the original and the Mesopotamian Noah, to build a vessel and preserve life. In the book of Enoch, Uriel is given nearly the same exact mission. After the Watchers, a group of fallen angels, corrupt humanity by mating with humans and the animals on earth, God instructs Uriel to go to Noah and tell him of the impending destruction. Uriel reveals the divine plan and helps guide Noah towards salvation. This positions Uriel not only as a messenger but as a preserver of sacred knowledge and divine order, just like Enki, who often acts as a compassionate mediator between gods and mankind. So from the Mesopotamian perspective, we can observe the same verses the following way. In 1 Enoch chapter 10 verses 1 to 4, when God commands Uriel to go to Noah and warn him of the coming flood, which is the judgment against the corrupted earth, Uriel is told to declare to Noah in God's name what is about to happen and to instruct him on how to preserve himself and his family. In these verses, Uriel acts as a messenger of divine preservation as well as judgment. But in the Mesopotamian version, this is Enki warning Ziusudra, the Mesopotamian Noah, of the flood via yelling at the reed wall in his sleep, since Enlil was bound by the council of gods to not tell a living soul about the upcoming flood, since Enki had helped Ziusudra, Mesopotamian Noah, curb all the prior punishments. When Uriel is then commanded to stand over the destruction of the earth and watch as the punishment is enacted upon the Nephilim and their angelic fathers, this is Enki and the other deities that were more compassionate and personable with mankind and involved with mankind when they were forced by Enlil to watch and listen to the people who had became family and friends cry and die and then eventually wash ashore after the waters receded. In 1 Enoch 19:1, Uriel shows Enoch the place where the fallen angels are bound. He describes to Enoch how the spirits of the Nephilim that were now disembodied remain on earth as unclean spirits, also known as demons, unable to ascend to heaven nor to return to the underworld. These cursed beings were to afflict, oppress, destroy, attack, do battle, and work destruction on the earth until the day of judgment. This is explaining how humans were Enki's creations and his friends, like family to him, and he had no trouble with them interbreeding with angels. But since the Anunnaki has a pecking order and Enlil is above Enki in this instance, Enki as king of the underworld, otherwise known as the abyss and deep waters, just like Uriel was said to be in the Testament of Solomon, has authority over demons and humans as our creator. So of course, as our creator and over demons, because he was the one who got placed as Satan in the Bible, because he was said to lead the fallen angels. In this this case, Enki was all for his fellow Anuna interbreeding and being kind to mankind. He was not sitting high and looking low. He was the mediator. That's why they call him the messenger deity, the medium between the gods or God and humankind. So of course, he was granted authority over these damned and cursed entities and spirits. It is only natural that the cursed offspring are to be under his authority, since he was conducive to the behavior that caused them to end up cursed and created in the first place. Later in 1 Enoch 20:2, Uriel is listed as the holy angel who is over the world and over Tartarus, the prison of the fallen angels. Enki as the prince of the underworld and the abyss is his overseer. It makes sense that he would be the warden of Tartarus. And remember how Uriel was also said before to have the keys to hell. Well, who else has keys? In the Mesopotamian narratives, when it is conformed into Christianity, Enki was not only Jesus, but biblically Satan, Lucifer, and the serpent in the Garden of Eden. Uriel is also said to be a cherubim angel, which is what Lucifer was said to have been. Now, do you remember when the Bible mentions Jesus having the keys of hell and of death in Revelation 1:18? When he speaks directly to John in a vision, when Jesus says, I am he that liveth and was dead, and behold, I am alive forevermore, amen, and have the keys of hell and of death. This is also supported by a few other scriptures, including Ephesians 4:9, when it states, now that he ascended, what is it but that he also descended first into the lower parts of the earth? And 1 Peter 3:19, which states, by which also he went and preached unto the spirits in prison. I'm going from the King James Version here. So these passages contribute to the belief that after Jesus' crucifixion, he descended into the realm of the dead, sometimes called hell or Hades or Tartarus, and preached to the souls there, offering redemption to the righteous who had died there before his resurrection. Thus, in the King James Version, we see that Jesus' death and resurrection granted him dominion over death and hell, fulfilling prophecy and making him the eternal authority over life, death, and the world to come. But there's a deeper layer to consider. In many ancient texts, especially the Old Testament and apocryphal writings like Enoch, the pantheon of Anu, who is the king of the heavens, and Enlil, who is Anu's son and was deemed by Anu to rule over the air and judgment on earth, and Enki, the other son of Anu, who was deemed to be the prince of the underworld, the abyss, the waters, and wisdom, are often condensed and translated into being a singular god in Abrahamic religions. This is essentially the Judeo-Christian tradition where the divine functions of the Mesopotamian Trinity are merged into a singular monotheistic deity, meaning Anu, Enlil, and Enki are the Holy Trinity that are unanimously called God. Within this fusion, Uriel may not be merely a subordinate angel. He could be a reframed and a reinterpreted version of Enki himself, renamed and reshaped through the lenses of later religious transformation. Enki's sister wife, Ki, who is another one that is a part of the Holy Trinity, which in my opinion should be a tetrad or quaternity, because it is she that is the illuminator. She is the mother of earth and varying religions, as well as the matron of fertility and sex and love, that is also divided into being so many gods and later pantheons at the same time because of her complex rules and actions. This is why they divide her in one pantheon. They could divide Ki into 5 different deities, but she is the illuminator as the eastern and the morning star. She is Venus, and our Bible was actually named after her when they called her Biblios in Phoenicia, which actually means our Bible was named after Lucifer, because Lucifer is the morning star, Venus. But given that she is a female deity, the Christian Bible uses a trinity to unanimously stand in for one God. But if you read the Mesopotamian epics, or if you've been a fan of this podcast for a while, you know that you can clearly see who's doing what all throughout the Bible, whether you are reading canon or non-canon, because these 4 different entities have different domains, abilities, characteristics, personalities, actions, and storylines. Agendas, history, depictions, time, migration, religion, etc. is what changes that original story, however. Now let's talk about Aquarius. In astrology, Aquarius is connected to divine wisdom, intuition, higher consciousness, and innovations, which aligns with Uriel's role as the archangel of wisdom and illumination. Aquarius is the water bearer and a fixed air sign that stands as the 11th astrological sign that initially was a representation of Enki to the ancient Sumerians and Babylonians. Some would say Aquarius is linked to Uriel due to him being the archangel associated with Uranus, the planet that rules Aquarius, although this is historically more modern and developed with the discovery of Uranus in 1781. It is a part of modern occult traditions like that of the Hermetic Order of the Golden Dawn, so it depends on one's belief system. Aquarius is the water bearer. Uriel is a cup bearer. The association of Archangel Uriel with a cup or chalice is notably prominent in the Ethiopian Orthodox Tawahedo Church, particularly within the text known as the Homily on the Archangel Uriel. This homily recounts that during the crucifixion of Jesus, Uriel dipped his wing into the blood and water flowing from Christ's side, filling a chalice with it. He then carried this chalice and alongside Archangel Michael sprinkled its contents across Ethiopia. According to the tradition, wherever a drop landed, a church was established. Consequently, Uriel is often depicted women in Ethiopia as holding a chalice filled with Christ's blood, symbolizing sanctification and divine blessing. In Western esoteric traditions, while Uriel is not commonly depicted with a chalice, the chalice itself holds significant symbolic meaning. In the Book of Ceremonial Magic, a grimoire compiled by author Edward Waite, there is a reference to a ritual involving Uriel and a searing cup. This ritual, detailed in the Verum Jesuitarum Labalis, describes a conjuration where Uriel is commanded to appear and reveal desired knowledge or item, with the searing cup serving as a medium for divination. Additionally, in the teachings of Samuel Anwar, particularly in his work Igneous Rose, the chalice is symbolically associated with the human mind. He describes the chalice as representing the brain, which should be filled with the blood of the lamb, a metaphor for divine wisdom and spiritual enlightenment. While Uriel is not directly linked to this chalice in War's teachings, the symbolism aligns with Uriel's role as a bearer of divine light and knowledge as the cupbearer. This brings us to Ganymede. Ganymede in Greek mythos is the representation of Aquarius. Ganymede was a stunningly beautiful Trojan prince. He was actually the son of King Troy and said to be the most handsome of mortals. Ganymede was out tending sheep one day when an eagle that was either under Zeus's command or Zeus himself abducted him and transported him to Mount Olympus, where Zeus granted him eternal youth and immortality to serve as the official cupbearer to the gods as successor to the goddess Hebe, who is the daughter of Zeus and the queen of gods Hera. Hebe was believed to be responsible for maintaining the youth and immortality of the other gods and was the wife of Hercules, or Heracles as he is called in Greece. The story of Ganymede evolved over time from being platonic into Zeus having a fondness for Ganymede in a sexual sense by the 5th century BC. Ganymede's Latin name is Catamitus, from which the English word catamite derives. A catamite in ancient Greece and Rome was a pubescent boy who served as the intimate companion of an older male in a pedophilic-like relationship, but back then it wasn't against the law and it wasn't viewed in the disgusting way we see it now. It was just life. Now in modern terminology, catamite refers to a boy who is the passing or receiving partner in anal intercourse with a man, a bottom. And it is possible when we think back to the story told in the Testament of Solomon that the boy that Ornias was drinking and taking wages from was sort of a catamite. But the question for now is, what was this drink of the gods? Let's talk about the dark cup.
The dark cup. Across the ancient world, the cup or chalice of the gods was more than a mere vessel. It was a symbol of immortality, divine authority, and cosmic truth. The contents of these sacred cups varied by culture, but nearly all carried transformative or transcendent power. In Vedic tradition, the gods drank soma, a divine elixir pressed from a mysterious and now lost plant. Soma granted immortality, insight, and vigor, and was especially associated with Indra, the thunder god, and Agni, the fire deity who served as the messenger between gods and men. These are the Hindu versions of Enlil and Enki, respectively, with Indra being Enlil and Agni being Enki, although the two gods appear as many differing gods throughout the Hindu god pantheon. In ancient Greece, the Olympian gods consumed nectar and ambrosia, with nectar being the drink and ambrosia the food. These substances kept the gods eternally youthful and were often served by Hebe or Ganymede, mortal cupbearers elevated to divine status. The Celtic gods, such as the Dagda or the goddess Ceridwen, were linked to cauldrons or cups of inspiration, which brewed wisdom, prophecy, and rebirth. In Christian mysticism, the Holy Grail, said to have caught the blood of Christ, became a vessel of divine truth and eternal life, its origin tied to both historical sacrament and mystical legend. While the high gods drank from cups containing life-giving, immortalizing elixirs, lesser gods, chthonic deities, and divine intermediaries often drank from or held vessels filled with blood or blood-symbolic fluids. In Egyptian mythology, the goddess Sekhmet, enraged and bloodthirsty, was calmed by a lake of beer dyed red to resemble blood, a symbolic chalice meant to transform rage into peace. In Hebrew scripture and mysticism, especially within the Psalms and prophetic books, there are references to the cup of divine wrath, filled with blood or foaming wine that symbolizes judgment, e.g., Psalm 75, verse 8. The priests of the Hebrew temple would also catch and sprinkle animal blood from sacrificial offerings using sacred cups. In Aztec religion, the gods were quite literally nourished by blood. Human hearts were cut from the chest, and their blood collected in ritual bowls or cups to appease war gods like Huitzilopochtli, maintaining the cosmic order. In Greek Dionysian rites, wine stood in as symbolic blood, intoxicating, ecstatic, and tied to death and rebirth. But some rituals may have involved actual animal blood in sacrifice. Dionysus, as a god of divine madness and transformation, often blurred the lines between wine and blood. In Norse tradition, blood sacrifices or blots involved collecting the blood of animals in sacred bowls or horns, then sprinkling it on statues of gods such as Odin or Freyja. The act was seen as sharing life force with the divine, especially during seasonal festivals. Likewise, the Mithraic mysteries of Persia and Rome featured the Tauroctony, the slaying of the sacred bull, whose blood was believed to grant purification and rebirth, a scene often carved with Mithras receiving this holy essence in a bowl or cup. Thus, the divine cup appears in two distinct classes across cultures: those of the celestial gods, filled with ambrosia, soma, or mystical brews, and those of the underworld, warrior, or transformative deities, filled with blood, literal or symbolic. The former preserves and elevates, the latter purifies, judges, or sacrifices. Both, however, represent the most intimate exchange between the divine and mortal realms, the transfer of essence, whether it be life, truth, wrath, or rebirth. The mythic threads of sacred chalices, divine libations, and vampiric bloodshed all converge powerfully in the story of Ornias from the Testament of Solomon, a demon whose presence challenges the boundaries between the heavenly and the fallen. Ornias is a shape-shifting vampiric entity who feeds nightly on the blood and vitality of a beautiful young boy, a figure eerily similar to Ganymede, the mortal cupbearer to Zeus. Just as Ganymede poured nectar for the Olympians, the boy in Solomon's court seems to have been targeted for his essence, his blood becoming the drink for a corrupted divine. Ornias transforms at will: a lioness, a woman, a hag, a winged creature able to ascend the heavens, hinting at a once celestial nature now twisted. He originates from the constellation Aquarius, traditionally the water-bearer, but Ornias does not bring divine water like the gods drink. His cup is filled with blood, a vampiric inversion of sacred elixirs like soma, ambrosia, or the Celtic cauldron of wisdom. In various cultures, these sacred drinks gave immortality, insight, or spiritual elevation. In contrast, Ornias's consumption of blood drains life, offering not eternal youth but decay, sickness, and spiritual inversion. What deepens the significance of Ornias's story is that he identifies Uriel as both his progenitor and commander. Uriel, one of the four principal archangels, is often portrayed as the angel of wisdom, divine fire, and heavenly alchemy, associated in later mysticism with Aquarius, the bearer of truth and cosmic knowledge. That Ornias is both subjugated by Uriel and yet his offspring draws attention to a troubling implication, that Uriel, or those aligned with him, may have transgressed the divine boundary, echoing the narrative of the Watchers in the Book of Enoch. According to Enoch and the Book of Giants, demons are the disembodied spirits of the Nephilim, the hybrid children of fallen angels and humans, and even animals. That is exactly why we have mythical animal hybrids like fauns, sphinxes, werewolves, cyclops, humanoid giants, minotaurs, chimera, and the lot of them. That is why sometimes people have cryptid encounters with the disembodied spirits of these spirits, or those who survived the flood. Because in non-canonical texts like Jasher, there are brief appearances of surviving cryptids. These offspring, being neither fully divine nor fully mortal, were cursed after death to roam the earth as demons, unable to ascend to heaven and doomed to torment humanity until the final day of judgment. The fact that Ornias is classified as a demon, yet can still ascend into heaven in winged form, implies he is a surviving remnant of these forbidden unions. His lineage as an offspring of Uriel aligns with the idea that even among the archangels, there may have been those whose offspring were not sanctioned, leading to beings like Ornias, intelligent, celestial, but corrupted by forbidden mixture. The vampiric and blood-centered nature of Ornias mirrors the dark cups of lesser or chthonic deities across cultures. While high gods drank from chalices of divine nectar, figures like Sekhmet, who thirsted for blood and was pacified by beer dyed red, or the Aztec gods, who demanded real human blood in ritual bowls, reveal a pattern. The pattern being that when divine essence is misused or mixed, it manifests in blood sacrifice, wrath, and cursed half-beings. When we take a look at Greek mythos, for example, the original divine drink of ambrosia is typically for beings who have ichor, but not for beings who have blood in their veins. Ichor is the ethereal fluid that flows through the veins of the gods. Ichor is toxic to humans and was said to kill them instantly if they came into contact with it. Such lore would explain human mother dying during birth of their hybrid demigod children with the fallen angels, but would also present a problem with the hybrids having the same sustainability and immortality as the parent that is fully angelic or deity. As such, as generations pass, sustaining immortality would require something they cannot get their hands upon because they are hybrids and abolished from the same spaces as the angels and gods. They would also have a different thirst, because they are part human or partially an earth beast. This is where the blood factor and energy factor comes in for vampirism, whether they are alive or disembodied. Thus, Ornius stands as a powerful symbol of the consequences of divine transgression. His bloodlust is not random, it's inherited. His cup is filled not by grace but by the perversion of divine order. He is a fallen water-bearer, the corrupted grail, and a warning of what happens when celestial beings pour their essence into mortal vessels unbidden. And in binding him, Solomon, guided by the same Uriel who may have fathered him, demonstrates that divine justice seeks to correct even its own ancestral errors, restoring order with the very light that once fell. Why blood? 1. Blood as life essence. Across ancient cultures, blood was never just fluid. It was the sacred carrier of life force. Leviticus 17:11 even states, "For the life of the flesh is in the blood, and I have given it to you upon the altar to make an atonement for your souls, for it is the blood that maketh an atonement for the soul." In this sense, offering blood to a deity meant offering life energy, either as a gift, tribute, or appeasement. 2. Why cows? Specifically, cows were often seen as sacred because they were providers of nourishment, milk, meat, labor, and deeply connected to earth, fertility, and abundance. In Hinduism, cows are revered as maternal figures, and in ancient Egypt, the goddess Hathor, who could also take the form of a lioness, was connected to cattle, fertility, and divine intoxication. Also, Enlil, whom in Abrahamic religions is called God, was known to be a horned entity. We see this when he appears as Zeus in Greek mythology as well, but in Mesopotamia, he was also known as the raging bull. As you know, a cow is a female bovine and a bull is the male. But here's what makes cow blood so uniquely significant in ancient contexts. Rich in symbolism, cows are domesticated yet powerful, docile yet deeply connected to the earth. Red as divine fuel. In alchemical and ritual traditions, red substances, like cow blood, ochre, or wine, represented divine fire, vitality, or cosmic rage. Cattle were wealth. To sacrifice a cow and spill its blood meant offering something of immense material and spiritual value. 3. God's drinking blood. What it means. Appeasement and feeding. In Mesoamerican rituals, like among the Aztecs, gods were believed to require blood to survive. Human sacrifices were made so the sun would rise, the rain would fall, and life would continue. 4. Retribution or wrath. In Egyptian mythology, when Sekhmet, the bloodthirsty lioness aspect of Hathor, went on a rampage, she drank human blood until gods tricked her by giving her red beer that resembled blood. This stopped her carnage, symbolizing how divine rage could only be quenched with a life force substitute. The lioness deity being an aspect or form of Hathor brings another thing Ornius said into mind. He mentioned riding men as hags at night. In other cultures, hags are shadow people, or jinn in Islam, and there is a form of jinn that can be deceiving and appear as humans until you look at their feet and they have the hooves of bovine or donkeys. Ornius also said his other form is a lion, and remember, Sekhmet is the lioness form of the cow deity, Hathor. Hathor is the Kemetic name of the Sumerian goddess Kai, who is the sister and wife of Enki, and with Enki as Uriel, and Uriel being the head of Ornius and Ornius being a descendant of Enki, the vampire in the Testament of Solomon and his different forms begins to make sense. Binding contracts. Blood was also covenantal, used to seal pacts between gods and men. When blood was consumed or poured on altars, it symbolized a binding agreement, especially in Abrahamic traditions. Vampiric or cosmic hunger. Some deities or spirits, like Ornius in the Testament of Solomon, are described as feeding on blood, not out of hunger in a physical sense, but because blood contains spiritual information. The ancients believed that blood carried memory, emotion, sin, and lineage. A deity consuming it was interfacing with the soul of the offering. In summary, the idea of gods drinking human or cow blood ties into the broader belief that blood is the carrier of divine life. Cow blood specifically represents power, fertility, sacrifice, and cosmic nourishment. The act of gods drinking blood is a symbolic gesture of power exchange, wrath, covenant, or transformation. Blood is a symbol in Christianity and witchcraft. Blood holds immense symbolic and spiritual power across religious and esoteric traditions. In Christianity, it represents life, sacrifice, covenant, and divine redemption, most vividly expressed through the rite of communion. In witchcraft and various mystical systems, blood is also a sacred substance, often associated with life force energy, ritual binding, protection, and power. While the two contexts seem contradictory on the surface, they reflect a shared ancient understanding that blood is the medium of spiritual potency and transformation. 1. Communion, drinking the blood of Christ. In Christianity, Holy Communion, or the Eucharist, is a ritual reenactment of the Last Supper, where Jesus said, "This is my blood of the New Testament, which is shed for many for the remission of sins." Matthew 26:28, King James Version. During communion, wine, or grape juice, symbolizes the blood of Christ. Bread represents his body. Believers drink and eat these elements to commune with the divine, remembering Christ's sacrifice and symbolically partaking in his life and redemption. This is a ritual. It binds the believer in a blood covenant with God. The act of ingesting sacred substance parallels many ancient rites where consuming a god's body or blood was believed to grant divine favor, insight, or eternal life. 2. Blood in witchcraft and esoteric practices. In witchcraft, blood is also a sacramental substance used in binding spells, blood pacts, or as a means to empower sigils or talismans. A few drops of blood may be offered in ritual as a life force exchange, acknowledging that power always comes at a price. It can also serve as a personal taglock, a biological link to a practitioner or target, enhancing the spell's potency. Esoterically, blood is seen as a carrier of intention, memory, and ancestral energy. The essence of one's will, much like how Jesus' blood is the essence of the new covenant. 3. The paradox and the parallel. From an outsider's view, Christian communion could be interpreted as a sacred blood ritual, a symbolic act that mirrors practices often deemed occult. Ironically, some early Romans accused Christians of cannibalism for this very reason. Many esotericists observe that Christianity, especially in its sacraments, mirrors mystery school rituals that predate it: initiations, death and rebirth symbolism, sacred feasts, and yes, the symbolic use of blood. The key difference lies in intention and context. In Christianity, blood is used to redeem, sanctify, and unify under God. In witchcraft, blood is used to manifest will, connect, or manipulate energy, sometimes for healing, sometimes for control. Yet both recognize the transformative power of blood, whether divine or personal. Conclusion. Blood is sacred because it is life itself. Both Christianity and witchcraft tap into this ancient truth, that to shed blood, or to symbolically consume it, is to engage with life, death, and power at the deepest level. Whether as the blood of Christ that cleanses sin, or the blood of the witch that seals a spell, both traditions understand blood as a bridge between the physical and the spiritual, the seen and the unseen. Deities that drinketh. In Kemet, modern-day Egypt, Sekhmet, the lioness goddess of war, wrath, and plague. She was drunk on human blood during her rampage until Ra tricked her with red beer dyed to look like blood, calming her rage. This bloodlust shows the link between divine fury and blood offerings. Hathor, as a cow goddess. Though more peaceful, Hathor was sometimes conflated with Sekhmet. Cows were sacred, and their blood may have been symbolically offered during festivals like the Feast of Drunkenness, connecting fertility, wine, and blood-red intoxication with divine ecstasy and rebirth. 2. Mesopotamia, Sumer, Akkad, Babylon. Lamashtu, a demon goddess who drank the blood of infants and pregnant women. Though not a god in the traditional sense, she represents a cosmic imbalance that demands blood to survive, possibly a corruption of divine hunger. Ereshkigal, queen of the underworld. Rituals to placate her sometimes involved bloodletting or animal sacrifice, and cows and goats were among the animals used. The Anunnaki. In some texts, the gods rebelled over labor, and humanity was created to offer sacrifices of blood and flesh to sustain them. 3. Canaan Levant, Moloch, associated with child sacrifice, especially burning and bloodletting. Though more demonized in the Hebrew Bible, Moloch reflects a time when blood was given to gods as the highest form of tribute and power exchange. Baal and Asherah. Offerings often included animals, and in extreme cases, recorded in archaeology and Ugaritic texts, blood rituals may have occurred to bring rain or success in war. 4. Greece. Hecate, the goddess of witchcraft and the underworld, often honored with black animal blood sacrifices, like dogs or cows. Blood was used to contact spirits or open liminal space. Dionysus. While associated with wine, his mystery cults sometimes used blood substitutes, like wine or bull's blood, to symbolize madness, resurrection, and communion with the divine. Demeter, in some Orphic rites, received bull sacrifices, symbolizing life, death, and rebirth through grain and blood. 5. Mesoamerica, Aztec and Huitzilopochtli, required human heart and blood offerings to power the sun. Blood was the fuel of the cosmos. Cows were not native, but the idea of life force through sacrifice was central. Tezcatlipoca demanded self-bloodletting rituals, as well as human offerings. Blood was seen as the ultimate divine currency. 6. Hindu Vedic traditions, Kali, drank the blood of demons, especially Raktabija, whose blood spawned more demons. Kali had to drink every drop to end the chaos. This is symbolic of a god consuming the very power source of evil. Durga also drinks demon blood in some versions of her battles. Blood equals power, and to drink it is to dominate and consume the essence of chaos. Soma, the drink. Not blood, but a divine elixir made from unknown or possibly psychedelic plants. It replaced blood in some rites and was offered to gods like Indra. The symbolism is nectar of immortality, not wrath. 7. Biblical, apocryphal Yahweh, God. In the Hebrew Bible, animal blood was used for atonement, not drunk by God, but offered and poured as sacred. The life is in the blood. Christianity's Jesus inverts this. Jesus offers his own blood, and it becomes a symbolic drink in the Eucharist, tied to divine covenant and sacrifice. Ornias from the Testament of Solomon, a blood-drinking demon, possibly a corrupted watcher or offspring of one. His behavior echoes ancient fears that fallen beings thirst for the life force of mortals. Key themes and summary. Gods require blood as a form of energy, covenant, wrath-quenching, or balance. Cow blood was unique because the cow itself symbolized nourishment, order, and abundance. To use its blood was to offer the most pure, docile, earthly sacrifice. In many cultures, blood isn't just about death. It's about divine digestion of power, sin, fertility, and fate. The shift from drinking blood to drinking wine, or soma, ambrosia, red beer, etc., symbolizes an evolution from violent sacrifice to symbolic communion. The degeneration of appetite, from divine soma to human or animal blood, also intersects with the sacred symbolism of cows. In ancient mythologies, the cow wasn't just a source of meat or milk. It was often seen as a divine being, descended from the goddesses of fertility, sky, and earth. The goddess Kai, Suma, also called Ninhursag, was a primordial earth goddess associated with fertility and mountains. She is seen as a parallel to Ishtar, Mesopotamia, Isis, Egypt, Hathor, Egypt, Inanna, Suma, Astarte, Canaan, and Shakti, India. Each of these deities either had cow imagery, were linked with the heavens and motherhood, or both. Hathor, for instance, was a literal cow-headed goddess who nourished the world and the gods. She was said to be the milk of the stars, and in some hymns her milk was the elixir of life. From this perspective, cows were not merely animals but celestial offspring, perhaps the descendants of divine unions between beings like Kai and other heavenly forces. Because of this sacred lineage, the blood of a cow was believed to hold mystical power. While Moses was being given the 10 Commandments upon the mountain, Hathor is the cow deity the Hebrews built an idol of to worship with the aid of Aaron, brother of Moses, after they escaped captivity in Kemet. In various ancient cultures, cow blood was sometimes used in initiation rites, youth elixirs, and healing rituals. The Greeks and Romans whispered of cow's blood as a source of longevity and in some cases even resurrection. The idea was not vampiric in the modern horror sense, but rather alchemical. To drink the blood of the most divine earthly creature was to partake in the goddess's vitality herself. So when deities or even kings, believed to be divine intermediaries, drank cow blood, they weren't indulging in barbarism. They were engaging in a sacred transaction, seeking to reconnect with divine origin and fertility, to reverse aging, or to gain the favor of the maternal cosmos. Over time, as mythologies evolved and religions changed, the literal act was often replaced by symbolic gestures, like drinking wine during ritual, a substitute for blood, or receiving milk as a sacred blessing. But the roots of the practice, divine essence transferred through the sacred cow, remained deeply embedded in both esoteric and mainstream spiritual traditions. The sacred cow and bull. We see this today in India because of Hinduism and its notion of the sacred cow, and Hinduism is the oldest surviving religion to date. Hinduism is not a religion born from a single prophet, book, or moment. It is a vast evolving tapestry of spiritual traditions woven together over tens of thousands of years. Unlike monotheistic religions that trace their origins to a single divine revelation, Hinduism is a syncretic system, organically formed from the beliefs of hundreds of indigenous tribes, sages, cultures, and civilizations that lived across the Indian subcontinent and beyond.
Energy leeches, a tale as old as time. An energy vampire is a being, human, spiritual, or mythological, that feeds on the life force, emotional energy, or spiritual vitality of others to sustain itself. The concept appears across ancient traditions, folklore, and modern psychology, and while interpretations vary, the core idea remains the same. Energy vampires drain others to feel powerful, alive, or balanced, often leaving their targets feeling fatigued, anxious, irritable, or emotionally depleted. In psychological terms, energy vampires are individuals who consistently demand emotional attention, create conflict, or manipulate others consciously or unconsciously to feel better or gain control. They may be narcissistic, which is an overused word sometimes. They may be passive-aggressive, overly dramatic, or chronically needy. Signs that somebody might be an energy vampire will be you will feel exhausted or off after spending time with them. They dominate conversations and rarely listen. They create chaos or crisis regularly. They use flattery, guilt, or pity to manipulate. In New Age and metaphysical beliefs, some claim energy vampires can physically attach to a person's aura or chakras, draining energy through invisible cords. Protecting oneself from such beings involves grounding, energetic shielding, and boundary setting. Ultimately, whether viewed through the lenses of folklore or psychology, energy vampires are tied to imbalanced energetic exchanges. One gives while the other only takes. In ancient Mesopotamian mythology, Lamashtu was a terrifying female demon who preyed on pregnant women and infants, draining their life force. She was believed to cause miscarriage, illness, and emotional despair. Her counterpart, Pazuzu, was often invoked to ward her off, which suggests that Lamashtu was more than just a myth. She was seen as a very real parasitic force. Lamashtu's activities mirror what we would now call an energy vampire. She attacked the vulnerable and fed on their vitality, leaving devastation in her wake. In Hindu mythology, Rakshasas are shape-shifting demons who drain the life force of humans and devour flesh. They are known to enter dreams, cause mental instability, and even possess people. A more subtle variant is the Vatala, a type of spirit that occupies corpses and influences the minds of the living. Vatalas are known to feed on energy, manipulating the living and tethering themselves to certain people or places to maintain their grip on the material world. The Chinese concept of gui refers to malevolent spirits of people who die prematurely, violently, or without proper ancestor veneration. These spirits are similar to the Mesopotamian Ikemu, and they haunted the living, causing illness, misfortune, and exhaustion. More directly, vampiric was the Jiangshi, or the hopping vampire, a reanimated corpse that drained the ki, or chi, or life essence of humans. The Jiangshi moved in a stiff, hopping motion and was propelled by Taoist talismans, mirrors, and the ringing of bells. These beings represented energetic imbalance and the cultural anxiety around improper death and burial. Ancient Greek mythology gave us Empusa, a shape-shifting demon who seduced young men in their sleep and drained them of energy, often killing them. She was a servant of Hecate and was said to appear beautiful until revealing her monstrous form. Similarly, Lamia, once a queen beloved by Zeus, was cursed by Hera, Zeus's wife and the mother of the gods. Lamia was cursed to devour her own children. She turned into a monstrous figure who preyed on children and young men, consuming their essence. Both women represent the seductive, draining archetype often designed to energy vampires in folklore. In truth, though, Lamia was a victim. In Jewish mysticism, Lilith is perhaps the most well-known ancient energy vampire archetype, often associated with wind spirits or night demons. Lilith was said to seduce men in their sleep, steal the breath of newborns, and cause nocturnal emissions, essentially feeding off human vitality and spiritual essence. In Kabbalistic teachings, she is linked to Klipvoth, or Shadow Realm, representing the chaotic and parasitic forces of the universe. Her reputation as a dream on male energy and a threat to motherhood makes her one of the oldest documented psychic vampires. As you can see, vampires have origins that are not explained in popular takes surrounding Bram Stoker's Count Dracula, Vlad the Impaler, and Transylvania. They are not just pop fiction either. This has been Vampires, the Dark Cup.
Stay tuned for part 2 where we talk about real-world and known vampires.